This week's lecture is going to be about facility management. And really, this is a lot of health, safety, space, and density issues. This is going to be the only week that we're going to talk about it. But I'm talking more about managing the environment and the spaces and kind of working with licensing and some licensing regulations that we need to be aware of and policies that we might need to write. If this is not a strength of yours, it might need some additional information or side work that you're going to have to do. I'm not going to walk through what a diaper changing procedure should look like or how you write policies for hand washing or anything like that. It's more just bringing awareness to what we need to manage as supervisors, managers, and leaders of our programs. Most of us are really familiar with this. If you spend any time in the classroom, health and safety issues are the #1 things that we're really kind of focused on. And last week, a lot of my feedback for you guys when writing job descriptions was making sure that you added supervision, health, and safety to the duties and then also to the key responsibilities, because that is the most important job of a teacher, is you're keeping the children in your care healthy and safe, and you're supervising them at all times. So if you were going to need to terminate somebody, having that very clearly written out in your job description and also in the job contract that you sign with your employee is really going to be helpful if you ever do come to the point where you're terminating someone. You don't need to list every single thing. You can say in charge of sanitation, keep children healthy, make sure that safety behaviors are observed, and supervise children at all times. Things like that that are kind of umbrella terms for the duties that teachers need to be doing. It does come time to terminate somebody because they cannot fulfill this part of the job without a plan of action or a behavior plan. Having it clearly written out in the job contract and the job description is really going to help you through those termination procedures, because it clearly points out what part of their job they cannot do. And then if they were going to file a grievance or they were upset about the firing, showing them exactly where in the job description or the job contract it states that they're supposed to do this and that they were not doing it is really going to be helpful. And that's kind of why I brought that up. And the same kind of thing happens here, is we just want to make sure that we have enough policies and procedures to really support our staff. Because I just kind of sat down and I started typing out all the health and safety things that you are doing basically on a daily basis. And by you, I mean the program, either your teachers, your janitor, and your cook, if you're lucky enough to have one, you as the director, assistant director, lead teacher, whatever position you have. This is some of the things that you have to do. It's an incredibly long list of things that need to happen in order to keep children healthy and safe. A lot of it is fairly self-explanatory. We know that we have to do daily health checks. We know we have to wash our hands when we return to work after doing diaper changing, before food service, that type of stuff. And then there's a lot of other little things that we might not think about, but when you move into the director position, you need to be more aware of. Upkeep of the property, knowing when your roof needs to be repaired, making sure that you have fire inspections when you're supposed to, the paperwork for each employee and each child that you keep on file. So there's a lot. So this is something that you might be doing on a daily basis as a director. And so that's why I did a whole week on facility management, is how do you kind of keep your program running and how do you keep it healthy and safe. The biggest thing is that I think that you have a lot of policies and procedures. I'm a big proponent, obviously, that's what most of the class is, writing those types of things on a daily basis. It doesn't mean that, every single day you're having your employees read the procedure or reading the rule about something, but when you train them, it will be easier. And then also as a management person, thinking about and standardizing how you do something relating to health and safety can help you. So maybe you don't look at it all that often, but just sitting down and writing, this is how sanitation goes, or this is how I want bleach storage to happen in my center. These are the people that will be in charge of bleach storage. These are the people who make the bleach products every day. That type of stuff. Just thinking about it and standardizing it and having a set person in charge of it or delegating it to somebody can make sure that it happens daily, it happens correctly daily. And then also you're going to have to supervise it afterwards. So once you set up a program that runs well and you have the policies and procedures and rules in place and people know what is expected of them in the classroom in order to keep it healthy and safe, then you need to regularly supervise the staff and that they're managing those responsibilities. So you have to train them and you have to delegate them, but then you have to make sure that they're actually doing it correctly 365 days of the year. Well, we're not typically open, but a lot of programs are now open on Saturdays. Or, you know, just on a daily basis, the hours that you are open, that the people that work for you are doing things correctly. So they're doing bleach correctly. They're washing their hands correctly all the times that they need to wash their hands. When they pick up at the school, they're going through the school checklist every time that they pick up, that type of thing. I especially like in our textbook that they have this quote, in an environment that fosters competence. And this is in the facilities chapter of the textbook. And I diverge quite a bit from the textbook in this section. They are talking a lot about the classroom, what it looks like, where the children should go. And they talk about this environment that fosters competence. So environments that say yes, that set children up for success, that set them up to be healthy and safe and manage the space. I completely agree with that, but when I think about it as a director, I think more for my staff. So, for example, when I was on Camp Pendleton, I was lucky enough that we got a lot of recycling money. So we got almost $500,000 because the base itself recycles, and then they put that money back into the upkeep of base. And so our playgrounds got it. And so we put in the most durable things that we could think to have. So we had a garden and we had some open natural space, but on our playgrounds, it was like super industrial. We had fake grass. We had the nicest kind of playground equipment that we could think of. We had the foam stuff that you kind of jump on. So there was no wood chips, there was no grass to mow or to weed. Everything was super, super simple. And even our sandbox, I spent a lot of time thinking about the sandbox because we know sand getting everywhere is a safety hazard and it's really annoying. And then somebody has to sweep it. And when they're sweeping, they're not looking at the children and all this type of stuff. So we actually kind of developed, I don't know, I mean, I would probably tweak it a little bit more, but it was a sandbox and then kind of had a berm around it to try to kind of keep the sand in place, and then it had fake grass around that so that even if sand was getting out of the sandbox, which it always will, it kind of had this fake grass to absorb it, so then children were less likely to fall and things like that. We also, as a team, we had a lot of different schools, so we invested in one of those tillers that you have for fake grass so it fluffs it, and so we would pay somebody to come in on a Saturday and use our machine and fluff our grass like every 6 months or something like that. So it looked really nice. And then we also wanted children to have some natural things. So either on the perimeter of the playgrounds or in a garden or a courtyard or something like that, we had that. But we took this environment and we fostered competence for the staff. So we tried to get rid of little nooks and crannies that children could hide so that you kind of had a really big wide vista of your playground at all times. We also had different sections spread all over to kind of prevent clumping of staff. We had a lot of fake grass that was easy to upkeep, so staff didn't have to worry about weeding or sweeping or things like that. We painted road signs and we painted areas for our bike lanes. So I really wanted to have an environment that fostered supervision, health, and safety on the playground, and it took away chores from the caregivers. So set your staff up for success by managing issues in the environment that might be out of their control. So they have a lot of things that they can control: sanitation, food service, diapering, hand washing, that type of stuff, and they have to do that. But if you can take something out of their hands so that the environment supports them in being healthy and safety, please do that so that they can focus on the actual children. I also want to talk about regulations because a lot of this has to go into regulations. So when I mean like that, I mean community care licensing, whose core mission is really to keep children healthy and safe. And that's why when they come out, they're really concerned about supervision, safety, and health. And that's the number one thing that you will be dinged on, and you'll have a violation or something like that on. So a good manager understands what licensing wants. They are abreast of the current regulations, and then they surpass them. Because when I kind of talk about regulations, within community care licensing or like ECHRs, you know, if you're a 3 or 4, that's like baby jail. I mean, it's fine, the children are healthy and safe, but you want to go beyond that. You want to have engaging lesson plans, you want to have caregivers that support and nurture them. Licensing is really more in like the bottom parts of the ECHRs are really concerned with that healthy and safe thing, which is so important, but we want to surpass it. So how can you keep a program running? How can you keep the facility up and running, keep it healthy and safe, and then go beyond that as well? So I do want to take you to the licensing main page. So okay, so this is the online forms and publications part of the Department of Social Services, which is where licensing is focused. So if you've never been on this, you need to. So if you are looking to become a lead teacher, an assistant director, or a director, most likely if you're a classroom teacher, you know about licensing, and it kind of freaks you out when they come and they white glove your classroom and all that type of stuff. But you also need to be really aware of what the forms and procedures and the actual regulations are. So this is where they all are. They're alphabetical. Most of them start with an L because it's licensing form 309 or 301E or something like that. A lot of them you might not ever have to really look at. Resident cash resources, you don't run a resident day program, you're not really going to have to figure that out. But you might, as a want to start a new program, and so you'll have an application for a child care license. Here is the form for it. And the fantastic thing about this, when I started out, all of this stuff was not digital. So you either had to go and get it and make copies, and they got all funky and they disgusting, and now you have them at your fingertips and you can print out the best copies that you need, which is especially great for employee files and parent files. I remember having to make them with like the worst copies ever. So it's so nice that all of this stuff is online now and it's digitized, and so you can get it whenever you need it. So here is everything that you need, or all of the files that you're going to need as well. I think also a great thing is that they now have videos. So when you go to community care licensing, you go to child care licensing, and then they talk about healthy and that their core mission is to keep children healthy and safe. And then they have a bunch of resources for providers. Did not have this when I came up either. The training and educational resources, the videos, all that type of stuff, the mandated reporter training, a lot of this stuff was of incredibly poor quality or was non-existent. So I think this is really, really helpful in that it goes over so many different things for you guys. So please, if you are moving into a management position, please spend some time watching these videos, because it kind of goes over the most important things. Like if somebody's coming to inspect you, or what's the difference between license and license exempt? Like if I have a gym, like a Crunch Fitness or something like that, and there's childcare, is that license or license exempt? What are licensing fees? What's a civil penalty? How do I background check? How do I supervise children? That's a great one to show to your staff. What are locks, bodies of water, transporting children? If you don't agree with licensing, a lot of people don't know that you can do this. You can file a complaint with community care licensing if you sincerely disagree or you felt that they were unfair in their review of you, then you can do that. It also talks about food service, disaster planning. During the fires, I had no idea, but if you came to this community care licensing front page during those horrendous wildfires that we had, they had information about evacuations and where you should go and who you should contact, because in addition to doing childcare, they also do residential care as well. So I wanted to show you guys that. I also wanted to show you, if you go to their website as well, you can sign up for a lot of like email alerts and stuff like that. So quarterly, they have a little newsletter that's fairly easy to read. And then like in May, when they release it, they'll typically always go over sunscreen, and they'll give off the licensing information for sunscreen administration. There's also a thing called Provider Information Notice, which is PIN, which is that's legislation that affects childcare. So if you sign up for this, then you can also go to your email and they will send it to you. And then this just goes over any kind of legislation that has happened that is going to affect the Department of Social Services and then affect childcare as well. So for example, there is action required. They're making some new expulsion programs on childcare programs, so you might want to check that out. And then some of them are just information only. So the Senate passed a bill about state employees. It typically has to go about like space limitations or retirement, things like that. But it's good information because like the immunization bill that kind of changed how we do immunizations in childcare, that came through a state assembly bill that changed how we do that. So knowing about it in advance will allow you to kind of make resources for it. All right, so now I'm back into our PowerPoint. So we've talked about licensing. And so I've gone through this website with you. It's really important that you get to know it on your own. Working for years as a preschool teacher has given you a really good background on what licensing is doing, a lot of hands-on information. And now if you are moving into management, it's really important that you attend the orientations that you have, that you develop a really great relationship as much as possible with your analyst. And for many of us in North County, that has changed. We're now out of the Riverside office. If any of you has met your new analyst, please shoot me an email on Canvas or by my regular email, letting me know how it went. If there's anything different, none of my friends that are still childcare directors have met with their analyst yet, so I'm interested to know and how this change is kind of going to affect us. But it's really important that you get to know the resources and things like that. And the only way you can do that is by working through the paperwork that you have. Next, I'm going to really flip over into the management of your facilities. And we're going to talk about space, density, health, and safety. So when you're managing space and density, the more children in your space, the more attention you have to plan for your environment. And that's ideally, especially if you are a for-profit, you're a corporate, or you're just a small business, you need to have or to be as close as possible to full enrollment at all times in order to bring in enough income to pay for all the expenses that you have. But that means that you need to really pay attention to the space that you do have in order that it remains healthy and safe. So like nap times, making sure that children have enough space between nap times. That might mean moving furniture or not combining classrooms during nap, those types of things we have to take advantage. And then also split groups. I know a lot of programs do split groups and some programs don't. When I think of split groups, it means that like let's say your program after breakfast from 8:30 to when lunch starts at 11:30, you have those hours. So what you break up into groups. So one group goes outside and the other group stays inside, and then they switch. And so if you had a group of 24 preschoolers, let's say in a very large preschool classroom, instead of having 24 children doing all of the same things at all the same time, you've broken it up so that two preschool classrooms go outside. So one from each classroom go outside and they have some time out, and then we flip it again. And the ones that were inside now go outside. So then you only have 12 at one time in a large classroom, which is great for encouraging center times, encouraging small group work, artwork, things that might get messy. And then outside, not having 60 to 70 preschoolers on one classroom, you maybe have 20 to 30 on a playground, and that also encourages safety as well, and that they're not all trying to be on the slide or people are going to get run over on the swings, stuff like that. So I'm a big proponent of split groups when you can do it. It does take some finagling of your schedules, especially if you're sharing a playground with multiple age groups. In that case, you really want to look at ways that you can split up the space that you have for a playground. So for example, I had a courtyard, but I didn't have an infant playground. So I took part of my courtyard and I made it into a fenced off infant caregiving playground. So we put a shade. First it was just a pop-up canopy, and then eventually we were able to invest in one of the nicer like stable ones, the steel ones. And so half of my courtyard, well, it was about a third. 1/3 was a garden, 1/3 was like an open grassy space, and then another third of it was an infant playground, because the infants really didn't have space. They were only going on those buggy rides, and we really wanted them to have the space to be able to roam around. And then this also gave more space for eventually carving off an area for like a toddler, pre-toddler playground space, where we're able to kind of take a quarter of our preschool environment and eventually turn that into a playground as well. It was a years long process, maybe 3 years, in order to get all of those changes made. Grants coming in, money coming in from the federal government. I measured that playground so many times. I had so many conversations with people in order to make sure that we had enough space. But at the end of the day, we then had a space that was a lot more conducive to all the age groups that we were serving. Everybody got some quality outdoor time, and it made us have the ability to do split groups, which then led to a decrease in our safety issues, like our accident reports and things like that. It made for happier children and thus happier teachers too, and that we didn't have so many people, you know, stuck inside or all together outside or taking walks that kind of seemed meaningless. So that's kind of how I managed space and density. Also in the textbook, it is a good resource about dealing with space and density from a classroom and a teacher perspective. I don't think it is from a management perspective. Maybe I'm kind of hands off, but I feel like if it's your classroom and it's running well, then you have whatever kind of leeway you need to change it however you need to. So I had teachers that constantly changed it, bulletin boards, backboards, where the library area was, because I really trusted them that they knew about their environments. They knew where the block center should go, and the block center shouldn't go to the quiet reading area and stuff like that. And that's just personality-wise how they were. So my role, I guess, is quite hands-off when it comes to space and density for the teachers and how they set up their own classrooms. I'm more concerned in setting up kind of larger issues, making sure that we have playgrounds, or if children with special needs were in our classrooms, then I would have to get a little bit more involved in the classroom to make sure that we had enough aisles for a wheelchair to come and to turn around, or I had a teacher who had a set of crutches, so general changes that I needed to do in that case. So when we are talking about special needs, you kind of have to follow two different things. The American with Disabilities Act, which requires like accessibility, and then IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And that's like your IEPs, your IFSPs, things like that. So in your classroom, you could have a child with an IFSP who's 2 years old, who might be low-sighted. What kind of changes would you need to make to your classroom to help a child who might have low sight? The biggest thing to take away is that you can include children, and you can include children with a whole range of special needs into your classroom environment. It's much, much, much simpler than you would ever think, because social services, the family, and the child are involved helping you make these accommodations. You shouldn't be doing them in a vacuum. You should be getting help from therapists, early interventionists, the family, social services like social workers and education specialists and things like that. They should be helping you if they need to make those kind of accommodations. So for a child with a wheelchair, you're just making larger aisles so that the wheelchair can turn around. With a child with maybe low sight or is blind, making sure that you have braille, making sure that you have, there's some adaptive lamps and things like that. Or children with some behavioral issues, alarms on the door is very annoying, but very necessary for children who are flight risks. I had a child like that about a decade ago. And so we had to install those really annoying alarms for a while, but we always knew when that child was about to leave. And I actually think it became a deterrent for the child, because the alarms would go off and then everybody would look and he would get some negative attention that he wasn't really fond of in those situations. And we actually got a decrease in the kind of flying out of the classrooms that we were trying to work with. So it can be done. If you have any questions, please email me. I'm more than happy to help you accommodate and manage your space in order to accommodate children with special needs. All right, so managing density and maintenance. So the more children you have, the more maintenance you're going to have to do. In any case, if you have any amount of children, you are going to have to maintain your facility. For FCC people, calculating like the wear and tear into your budget. It's your house, they're using your toilets, they're using your toilet paper, they're running up and down your stairs, or they're crashing into your grass outside. You need to calculate that into your budget for sure if you're FCC. But when it comes to density and maintenance, it's especially maintenance. So what can you pay for and when can you do it? So I talked about the preschool, the playgrounds, and how long it took. It took about 3 years in order to get the playgrounds that I wanted. We used a lot of grants from the federal government, and then from like physical groups like nonprofits and stuff like that that want to encourage physical fitness, exercise, and movement in young children. We were able to get some grants as well in order to improve our grounds and our playgrounds and our classrooms. If you are struggling with your budget, being a nonprofit and getting grants and scholarships and money like this is probably a really great way to make those long-term programs that you need to have happen. There's a lot of money out there, but you have to know how to find it. You need to be able to write effectively in order to get it. So it does take a very specialized skill set in order to go and find that money. It is going to cost more now, but hopefully it's going to pay off later, like especially at the height of the drought when the government, especially the state, was giving almost unlimited funds in order to take out grasses. I did that in my own house. I actually got $10,000 back for doing part of my backyard and my front yard. And I saw a lot of businesses, especially in the East County, doing it, those medians that you have. So you have your front office or whatever. And then as you get to the playground, you would have like a strip of grass. Taking that out might have a lot of money now, and then you're having to put rocks and things in, or you might have to have somebody come and weed it once a month, but it will probably cost you less in the long run, and that you're not doing maintenance fees on grass, or you're not mowing or watering, things like that. So you just have to kind of be aware of the maintenance costs that you have. When you're planning for density and maintenance, I think the best thing is to communicate with your janitor if you're lucky enough to have one, or the handyman who comes in, or the woman who comes in once a month to deep clean the whole center for you, or if you have consultants or something like that. So the people that actually handle it. I know for a lot of us small business owners, I was once in this position at a nonprofit where the handyman was my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, and me and the staff were the cleaners. You know, we really didn't have any extra budget for that, but trying to keep it in my mind, like, oh man, the stucco is like on the side of this house that we were in is like totally gonna go, or that roof looks really shaky, or you know, having the janitor or the handyman or the cleaners once a month or something like that to tell you what's going on in the center, because your eyes are focused on the children and on the teachers most of the time, so you're gonna need those people to be your eyes and ears around the center, letting you know what's the next step, when is that roof gonna go, or when do I need to do this. Also with planning, you're prioritizing safety and health over logistics or beautification. So you're paying for a roof before you get a new playground. And that's part of why our new playgrounds that I talked about took 3 years, is because some other things popped up before then that then put the playground on the back burner. And I couldn't spend all of my time and attention on that. I needed to spend my time and money on other types of things. And that's a way that we really are managing density, is making sure that our maintenance is taken care of. All right, I'm going to jump into managing health, and I just sat down for a minute and I wrote out some of the policies that I might need when doing health. You need an exclusion policy for illness and sickness, and then you need one for staff as well. You need a daily health check procedures for your staff. You need a policy letter or part of your employee handbook for parents. And then you need enough copies of the daily health check, if it is in writing in your program, to be able to do it for a long time. You need administration of medication policy for your staff, and then for your families in the employee handbook. You need procedures for staff, and then possibly a checklist for administering, especially for like an unusual medication or like an EpiPen or something like that. I had a child who had seizures years ago. And she had a very unusual so she was having a grand mal seizure, seizing on the ground. We've called 911. They were so severe that we had an emergency medication as well that was like a suppository. So teaching the staff that was in the classroom, and then I felt really uncomfortable. I've never given I wasn't a mom at the time. I had never given a child a suppository. So kind of, I made a checklist for myself, and we kind of walked ourselves through it, so that in the situation, as we have a child seizing on the ground, how are we, like, we needed at least 2 people. We were going to push her on her side. You know, one person was going to do this, one person was going to do that, because it was kind of an unusual situation. That's why I'm such a big proponent of kind of sitting down and walking yourself through something that's going to happen, because I know in emergency situations, I don't freeze up, but I get a little bit frazzled and my adrenaline starts pumping, and I knew in that kind of situation I wanted to provide the best care. And so walking through it myself, and then I'm very visual and verbal, and I like to write things down. So writing down exactly what I would do helped myself clarify it. And then because I was one of like 6 in a management, well, it was one of 4 in a management team with 2 administrative assistants. So it was a quite large front staff because we had 350 children. So walking through the front office staff and then some lead teachers in this as well kind of made us, and then the teachers who took care of the child with epilepsy kind of helped us all feel better about an unusual medication. So that was how I took it from like a big policy all the way to procedure to like a rule or checklist that kind of helped us all in the moment when we did have to do it. It was still really scary for us the first time we did it. But since we had kind of practiced it and talked through it, we felt a lot better. And that's why I'm such a big proponent of kind of thinking when you can in those slow moments at a child care center, thinking about the things that will make it run smoother when you're frazzled or when you're stressed or when it's an emergency situation. We also need to have an immunization policy. We have what the state tells us, and then you probably also have what you tell the parents as well, especially depending on the population that you work with. In some populations, immunizations are probably not an issue. In some populations, people are getting naturopaths and osteopaths and chiropractors who are doctors as well to sign off. So you're going to have to put a little bit more into your policy for parents, and then you have to decide what you accept as well. Do you accept a non-vaccinated child with a medical release? And then it'd be interesting to hear about license exempt, like childcare gyms and stuff like that, what they're doing as well. And then hand washing and diaper changing procedures. I like those with pictures posted in the classroom so the parents know what we're doing, new staff knows what we're doing. Anybody who comes into the classroom knows how we hand wash or how we diaper change. So what does licensing say? This is just generally, there's a lot more that goes into it, but these are kind of the big 3. You need to have 15 hours of health and safety training. You need to have a daily health check. You can't accept somebody who brings in a child with obvious symptoms of illness, and that's why we have a daily health check procedure. And then isolation of illness, you need to have a place, typically it's your office, where a child goes when they are sick. I think one of my favorite centers that we ever had, when we had a little remodel, we were able to carve off a little space off to the side of like the front lobby, and that was fantastic. And it had a sink and a large trash can, and it was totally tiled, and it was fantastic because we had a lot of pukers. So managing health as well, I think, is nutrition. I consider nutrition. When we talk about safety, we'll also talk about food safety. But something that you might be supervising and managing is, especially with your cooking staff, is do you have enough food for all your students? Do you have a healthy meal plan? Do you follow the food program guidelines? That's really important. You don't want to get docked on that. And then you prepare the food safely. If you go on YouTube, there's a great set of culinary videos for childcare series. That's literally what it's called. And it's a woman who goes over like menu choices, how you prepare things safely, some healthy ideas and things like that. But I think part of being healthy is managing nutrition, and if at all possible, having some healthy choices. I know generationally, when I started, having little food cups with like high fructose syrup and fruit in it was like totally okay. Now, thankfully, I think it's a good thing. We're now, fresh apple slices instead of, things that are in syrup. We're now having to try to have more fruits and vegetables that are fresh or that are, not in high sodium cans, things like that. So I think it's really good. I think we're headed towards a healthier path, and I think our parents are really spurring that. Parents are knowing more about nutrition, and they're wanting to provide healthier nutritional choices. And so they're wanting their preschools and their early childhood education programs to do that. I also think part of managing health is making a spot that's breastfeeding friendly for families. I loved when I was working for the Marine Corps, very long hours for some of our Marines who are moms. So we just had a lot of rocking chairs in our gliders in our infant rooms, and we always encourage them to come on their lunch break in order to kind of keep up that bond, because sometimes even going back after 6 weeks or 12 weeks, they still had really long days. Keeping that bond up between the child, encouraging the breastfeeding if it was possible for this family, if it made the most sense for the family. And as a mom who breastfed my kid, we really appreciate that, and that also encourages great health in our infants as well. Sunscreen, I just want to bring this up as it's starting to get warmer. It's springtime, so Then this is talking about the Title 22 recommendations about sunscreen. The biggest thing is in writing approval and instructions from the child's authorized representative for the administration of the medication of childhood. The best thing that you do is just print out a sunscreen sheet that you can find really easily for free online and have all the parents sign it, and then you have it labeled in the classroom as well. I think a lot of times when people, especially young people, when they start in this job, they just think that it's playing with children all day, and there's kind of a culture shock or just a shock in general when you see how much paperwork there is, and how like sunscreen is not an easy issue. Like sunscreen, like last summer my children got a horrendous burn because they were in a after school program summer camp thing, and they could not put sunscreen on them. So I would put it on at 8 a.m. And then I came back to pick them up. Well, I guess I dropped them off at 9 and I came to pick them up at 3, and they were completely burned because they had gone to the beach. It had washed off of their body, and now my little blonde children were completely sunburned because they couldn't do it. Most centers, especially in childcare, can put it on. You just have these kind of regulations that we need. We also have provider training. So I was talking about first-time licensees. You need to first aid, CPR, and then preventative health and safety as well. And then talking also about every 2 years, you have to have childcare providers renew their training. I talked about that a couple of weeks ago where I had an Excel spreadsheet. Everybody's dates that they did a specific thing came up, and then when it came time, it would kind of give me an alert, or it would highlight and it would say like, this is what needs to happen next. And then managing safety. So now we've done health, now we're talking about safety. The policies that I kind of thought about, and this is not in any case a huge comprehensive list, I'm sure I've forgotten something. Safety checklists, either in the classroom, outside, your playground, from your maintenance guy about the property itself, but daily, weekly, monthly, or as needed, depending on what you want, depending on what the classroom needs. Accident and injury reports, and then copies for all teachers in abundance, an injury report for staff, incident report for licensing. So like if a broken bone or child abuse or something big happens, you have to do an incident report for licensing, and it's important that you do that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to the licensing website and look for the incident report. Safety policy for staff about the children, and then a safety policy for families that's part of the the parent handbook. Then a supervision policy for staff, telling them about what you expect about supervision. This might be where you address clumping on the playground. Disaster preparedness policy for staff, and then possibly for families. And I think that is something with Parkland and all the different shootings that we've had, and especially after Sandy Hook, where kindergartners were targeted, letting parents know about the procedures that we take for active shooters, for fire drills, for disaster drills. I think as a parent, I know that that's the situation and the reality that we live in. It's a sad one, but knowing that the teachers took that seriously and they had prepared for it, I think would probably put me at ease. So if you have one, let me know about it. If you haven't and you'd like to write one, I think that would be a great idea, and I'd love to give you feedback. And then obviously for safety, staff need CPR and first aid. And I think volunteers, if they're working with children, should have that as well. I think it's a life skill that everybody should have. You probably shouldn't be able to leave the hospital with your child or adopt a child without CPR. Well, you can't adopt a child without CPR and first aid. But when I was pregnant, a first-time mom with my twins, I was talking to my dad about CPR and first aid because my husband was an EMT, so he always knew it. I had taught it actually. And I was talking to him about it, and he was giving me like the craziest thing. He was like, oh, it's like 122 to 2. And I was like, what are you talking about? 122. He's like, you can press 122 times to every 2 breaths. And I was like, you need to go do first aid and CPR right now, and then get your whooping cough vaccination. And because I was a first-time mom and my parents were first-time grandparents, they actually went out and did it. But I think it's a life skill everybody should have. And so I was kind of that mean volunteer person, and I would always require that my volunteers had it. Managing safety is food safety. So I have put out, this is once again, food safety recommendations from the California government that have to do with childcare. But this is from licensing regulations, these things that I'm talking about. So food prep is safe. and healthful and quality and quantity to meet the needs of the children. Between meals, snacks are served 2 out of the 4 food groups. Menus are written and posted 1 week in advance. Pesticides, toxics, soaps, and cleaning materials are not stored with food. They're stored in a separate location. Kitchen and food area is clean. All food is protected against contamination, and you have necessary, well-maintained equipment, including fridge, sink, hot and cold water, and storage. So this is exactly what licensing tells us. It's quite minimal. So if you are, if you're lucky enough to have a cook or you are not a cook, investing in some kind of online program where you can learn more about food safety is really important. Let me go back for a second. I did not really know about this when I first started. I didn't know about first in or first out, like milk storage and stuff like that. So it was something that I learned by fire and by trial, that I got hit on by licensing when I was doing it. And then I was lucky enough that when I went to Camp Pendleton, I was able to do a free food handler, like 40-hour training over 5 days. And so I learned a lot more about this, and I became a better supervisor and a better management of my kitchen staff. And then I knew what they needed to do, and I knew what clean meant, and I knew what contamination meant. So if you are having a center with a kitchen, you don't have to do the huge training program that I did, but there are free food handling programs like PowerPoints or with small quizzes that you can do online that will help you understand it. And you can also shadow your cook, or the person who comes in and cooks for you or drops off food, or however you have it. Shadowing and asking questions is going to allow you to be a better manager, because at the end of the day, licensing doesn't care who, like, you're going to get hit on it. They don't care if you have a cook. Your center and you as the boss of the center is the one that's going to be hit. So knowing a little bit about what's going on in your kitchen will help you in the long run, and make sure that it's safe and we're serving really healthy food to our children. I remember when I was doing that 40-hour on Camp Pendleton food training, it was done by the Navy, and so we had a corpsman, which is kind of like a nurse, or a trauma nurse out in the field. He came in and he talked about some of the things he had done before he transferred into like kitchen stuff. And so he was talking about on a aircraft carrier, they had a picnic one Friday, and they brought out a huge thing of potato salad. It sat on the deck for 6 hours. The mayonnaise curdled, and they had about 150 seamen and sailors have food poisoning because of that. That could very easily happen in childcare as well. We probably wouldn't put, unless we're having a party, we wouldn't put a thing of mayonnaise out. But what if the mayonnaise went bad? Or what if we didn't follow first in or first out? What if we unknowingly gave people, and especially young children like infants and toddlers, food poisoning? That would be terrible, and it could be catastrophic for our business. And then also it could be seriously injure the children in our care. So knowing what your kitchen staff is doing is really important. And then also managing safety is managing your staff safety. This is probably the worst. The children you make some iffy decisions. You see kids jump off the slides and stuff like that. But the things that I've seen staff do as adults is, like, I'll walk into a classroom and they're pinning things on the ceiling using a rolling chair, or sitting on another staff member's shoulders. And I'm like, what? We're adults. The children we expect this from. So talking to your staff and training your staff on what you expect about safety, like ergonomics. Don't pick up preschoolers, or use the stairs when you're doing diaper changing. Back safety, especially lifting children, is a huge workplace hazard. So talking to them about that is going to improve your program safety-wise, definitely, and limit your liability, workman's compensation that you might have to pay for. Janitors and cleaning staff, what do they need to do? What's dangerous? They're probably the ones dealing with the bleach and the bleach storage, or they're deep cleaning your program after hours and they're using more of the toxic chemicals. So what do you know about their program, and what safety things do you need to be aware of in that? And then if somebody is injured, where to go if they're injured. So you should probably have the name and address of your closest workman's comp doctor. You need to have an injury, accident, or incident reports for your staff as well. Managing safety medications, similar to our sunscreen. if you look up the 5 R's by Judith Calder, this will come up, and it's a really nice little handout that you can give to staff and families. So go ahead and look at this if you need it for your program. It's right medication given to the right child using the right amount at the right time given by the right route. So if you are giving a lot of medications to a child that's very sick, letting the parents know that you follow the 5 R's, and then training all of your staff in the 5 R's. You can give this handout, you can practice an unusual medication, or you can have it while you're doing first aid and CPR as a group, something like that, in order to make sure that your children, that you are making sure that medication is really safe. Managing safety disaster policies, I think a lot of us, it really depends on the program that we're at. Like if you're at a school district, if you're at a nonprofit, a business that you're running, something like that. So you might just have like fire and disaster, you might have lockdown, you might have active shooters. I think the biggest thing to think of is when, who, and how. When is it done? How is it done? And whose responsibilities is it? Who carries what? Who carries that? Who does the checklist? Who makes sure that every child leaves the classroom and double checks it again? Also, I think enough food and water. A lot of programs now mandate that you have enough food and water in order for a disaster to happen. And I think after the wildfires and the mudslides and things like that, where like Santa Barbara got completely cut off for Ventura. Like some people that I know at community colleges who lived in Santa Barbara physically could not get to their job in Ventura. The freeway was shut down. So if that was to happen, and maybe for a couple hours or half a day or even a day, you had a bunch of children before their parents could get to you, if a freeway shut down or something like that, do we have enough food and water to kind of cover that? And I think programs are getting better about that. And then making sure that you have fire inspections and they look at your fire extinguishers and things like that as well. So it really kind of depends on the program, but I think we're having to think more about this, first because of natural disasters, and then because of shooters in classrooms, especially if you work on a school district. Working with your school district, if you're not part of that group, like if you're like EES is kind of a nonprofit within the overall school district world. So like who do you work with in order to have this done? How are we going to keep our children safe? So disaster planning, the front page of licensing, during the fires, they had all this information, which was fantastic, talking about evacuations, talking about FEMA, support for families and children, all of this type of stuff. It was fantastic. And then there is a disaster planning guide from licensing as well. So go ahead and go to that as well. They will give you more information on what you need licensing wise, and some really good tips as well on things that you might need. I think transportation is becoming a bigger issue. I think we're a lot more aware of the fact that if we're going to have a school age program, which can be a moneymaker, you just need kind of a multi-purpose room. It's only a couple hours, and then maybe in the summer. So we probably need to transport children as well. If you're lucky enough, you can walk, but that brings in its own issues. I know there's a family childcare near the school where my children go, and I see them walking. They have the rope that has the loops on it. All 4 of the children hold on to it. They walk across the street with the family childcare provider. Because she's got the 2 little ones, like a toddler, 2 preschoolers, and then she picks up 2 children after school, and she probably has a small childcare home of her own. So she is doing it walking wise, and then I also see at my daughter's school that I can't remember, it's like Discovery Aisle or something like that. They have a large commercial van, and they at various times they do all of the pickups. So they do the morning drop off, they do the half day kinder, and then the transitional kinder drop off, and then the regular I think they're there about 5 times a day. So that teacher is probably a floater over at the Discovery Aisle, and then she also drives as well. It's a great moneymaker, I think, because we need to meet the needs of families who work, and the fact that, if you work an 8 to 5, you cannot pick up or drop off in this day and age. School is only 5 to 6 hours a day. Or if your child is lucky enough to get into transitional kinder or a part day kinder program, having somebody that can meet those needs is a really great way, I think, to make money. But you need to have policies and strict procedures for picking up, because you're not probably going to be doing that unless you're an FCC provider. So you're having one of your staff do that for you. So they need to be able to create and maintain relationships with that school personnel, and they need to follow the procedures for picking up. So, if somebody doesn't show up, but the parent didn't tell you that they were sick, or they have shown up, you thought they were sick, but now the child's here, am I supposed to be taking him, or is grandma? There's a lot of different things that can happen. So having a teacher who's been fully trained, who has a cell phone, who can reach you whenever she needs to, but also knows the policies and the strict procedures, is really going to help you in this situation. I want to talk a little bit about the online assignment, which is the operational file. So really all you're doing is you've written all of these documents for the last 10 weeks in this program. You're going to take that and you're going to put them into a template online. It is a chance to edit and refine based on what I've told you, because I've given you a lot of feedback. I said, oh, add health and safety to this, or maybe consider taking that off, or I've talked to you about your grammar and your syntax or something like that. So it's a chance to edit and refine it. If you were ever going to print this and have this be part of your program professionally, you want another edit on top of it to make sure that it makes sense to like a lay person or starting out aide or something like that. And that also that, the grammar is once again as correct as possible. And then, if you were doing an employee handbook, it would probably be several edits after that, because there's always little things, and parents like to see something that's written as effectively as possible that doesn't have any grammar issues or spelling mistakes, because that is a high level of professionalism that people expect from us. So this is your chance to do a first edit and refine it and make some changes based on the feedback that I've given you. I also decided that I wanted to add a section about policy and procedures that are missing. You're already working in the field. What don't you have? Like, what isn't working well? Maybe you don't have a playground supervision procedure and you're noticing a lot of clumping. And this would be great if you're a teacher or you always want to remain a teacher, but you maybe want to take on more of a leadership role, or you want to be a mentor teacher or something like that. What do you see as far as like health, safety, supervision? It could be really anything, but what policies and procedures are missing? I'm not asking you to write them. If you have them and you'd like to write them. So let's say you have a hand washing policy, but you don't have a hand washing like procedure sheet to post, or you don't like it, or you're making the switch from bleach over to like more healthy, natural, or less, like maybe like a hydrogen peroxide cleaner. Maybe you need a procedure about that, or you need to look up what licensing says about that. So what is missing? What do you have? Or maybe your human resources department has written a lot of stuff for you, but there are human resources people and they don't see the day-to-day about what you need. So maybe you could write something about that. So just add a little section, or in the template, there'll be a section about just giving me the topics that you would like to write a policy and procedure about, or maybe just in order to have a comprehensive group of policies. So that's what I really want, is an operational file for management. If things were happening, you could go on the computer and you could print off all of the things that you need. You need a policy about sunscreen, and you can go here and you can find it and you can print it off. What are the things that you maybe in the next year might need to write more about? Or what procedures are you missing because human resources doesn't know about classroom procedures? So that's kind of what we're doing with this operational file. I think I've talked a lot, and I went over a lot of different things, because the administration of health and safety and space planning is a huge amount. Like, there's so many things that you have to be concerned about, because children require a lot. They're somewhat helpless when it comes to health and safety. They don't know how to wash their hands. They don't know if they're wiping their nose, it's getting all over the place. Parents want to bring in sick kids. People don't want to immunize. Like, there's a lot of different things going on. And so we just need to make sure that you are managing and supervising all of the health and safety and space planning concerns daily. Because if it's not happening daily, then somebody's getting sick or somebody's getting hurt. It's really a daily job in order to make sure that these things are being maintained the way they're supposed to, and staff is doing what they're supposed to as well. So that is it for this lecture. I will see you guys in the discussion boards. Have a great week.